So you just got your Japanese N64 and you're eager to play some games, but can you even plug this thing into the wall and turn it on? Can you use it with old TVs or new TVs? How are you supposed to even use this thing? Well, this is the video for you. I'm your man out of Japan, Jay Contra, and we are going to talk about power and AV options for the Japanese N64. Let's start by talking about power. If you're buying a complete N64 from, say, a seller on eBay, or if you're lucky enough to go to Japan and pick one of these things up, they will usually come with two sets of cables. There will be the power brick and the composite AV cables. We'll talk about AV in a moment, but I like to talk about the power first. So this looks exactly the same as a North American power brick, but there is a key difference. This Japanese power brick requires 100 volts. That is the standard voltage that is used domestically in Japan. In the United States, however, we use 120 volts in our houses. Now, there are people online who have plugged their N64s, their Japanese N64s, directly into the outlet in the United States, and they've had their system work no problem. The issue is, however, that over time, you might end up overheating and putting excess wear on the console that you don't want to, because you're adding that extra 20 volts. And I've heard from folks that electrical components do have a certain range of tolerance that they will accept. So this 100 volt brick here might have no problem with 120 volts over maybe 10 years or so. But if you want to take the best possible care of your console, I would say what you should do is, for your Japanese Nintendo 64, just get a North American power brick. This slots in no problem. I've been using this for the last 10 years or so, and I haven't had any problems. You maybe could even use a third-party power brick, but I've often heard that those might even fry systems sometimes. I would recommend most highly, if you can afford it, to get a regular, first-party Nintendo N64 North American power brick and use that to power your Japanese console. So what about AV cables? Now, if you're playing your retro games on an old-fashioned CRT, you can use your Japanese composite cables or even your North American composite cables without issue. Basically, everything from the Super Nintendo up until the GameCube, all of the sort of external accessories are pretty much cross-compatible between systems. Super Nintendo to Super Famicom, N64 to Japanese N64. So you can use these composite cables here. You can also use S-video cables. I recommend the official Nintendo cables, but third-party cables haven't done me wrong in the past. Thankfully, for these old TVs, Japanese and North America have the same NTSC standards, so you can play your Japanese system on an American television with no problem. The problems might come, however, when you want to play your old system, and this is regardless of whether it's Japanese or American, on a modern television. And this has to do with how you just plug in to a modern TV from an old system. Because, for example, on this TV, it doesn't even come with composite or S-video or even component inputs. I can't plug this system into this TV, without using something special. Some HD TVs do have the plugs for, usually it's composite or component on the back of the television. You can plug your system into those TVs and you can play it, but it's not gonna look really great. It might not even control well just because of the way that the TV will process the analog system into a digital picture. So what I recommend that people use if they're going to play their old systems on a newer television is to get some kind of upscaler. Now, I have here the RetroTink 5X, but that's because I like to use it to capture footage, and you will also get the best picture possible out of a Nintendo 64 as well as a bunch of other different retro systems. But this thing is really expensive. You can use just another basic upscaler. For example, there's the RetroTink 2X, there's the OSSC. There are many different options that you can use that will convert your composite or S-video signal, or even in some cases component. It will convert that analog signal into a digital signal. You then plug the HDMI from your upscaler into the TV, and you will play the games with beautiful, crystal clear images. Now, the thing about the Nintendo 64 when we're talking about video output is that natively, the N64 only outputs composite and S-video. So in a video, I've used these HD Retrovision cables for the Super Nintendo. These will not work natively with the Nintendo 64. You will have to perform some kind of RGB modification on the N64 to use these component cables. Now, some people will do HDMI mods to their systems where all you need to do is plug an HDMI cable into your N64 and you can plug it straight into a TV. That is also another option. But what I use is just the S-video into the upscaler, into the modern TV when I'm capturing footage. Although I personally, when I'm playing games just for fun, I know crazy, an idea that you would play a game just for fun, I use an old CRT, and you will be able to connect your Japanese system to an American CRT without any issues. So what about the games? What if you even don't want to go out of your way to pay the $100 plus to buy a Japanese N64? Say, for example, you have a North American N64. I mean, they're basically, I think they're essentially the same system in terms of their internal components, although someone in the comments can correct me. So if you have already a North American N64 and you just want to get some Japanese games for it, for example, we have here a Japanese copy of the Ocarina of Time. Well, you think, oh, the cartridge slot looks exactly the same. Yes, you could put it in, but it's not going to make contact with the cartridge reader because of these tabs in the back of the system. So here I have a North American copy of Majora's Mask. Slots in, no problem. You can even hear that thing lock in. It's not going to be the same with a Japanese game. What you can do, there are two different options available to you if you have a North American N64. Inside, you will notice that there is a cartridge slot with little tabs. You can, if you're a crazy person, you can use like some clippers or like some wire snippers. You can go in, you can cut those bad boys out. But if you don't want to mangle your system, you can go online and buy a cartridge slot replacement. It will mean that you'll need a special screwdriver to undo the bottom of the system. You take the top of the system off, switch out the cartridge slots, put the top back on, and your Japanese games will work in that region-free cartridge slot, and you can play it straight from your North American system. Another option that I have seen on the internet is a pass-through adapter. It's this little slot that you attach into the N64, and then you put your Japanese game into that slot, which connects to the N64, and then you're playing your games no problem. That I think is just a little bit more annoying because of especially when you're trying to take games out, you might take the cartridge adapter with it. I would suggest either getting a Japanese N64, and especially because they have really cool, unique colors, or getting a region-free cartridge slot and switching that out yourself, because all it really takes is a special $4 or $5 game bit adapter that you can buy off of Amazon, and then you just can, you can take out the cartridges all day without having any problems. As for accessories, I mentioned previously that basically everything that's Japanese will work with a North American console and vice versa. That goes from the memory expansion packs, the things you'll find in North America will work with the Japanese system. American and Japanese controllers work no problem. I think PAL controllers also work. And I haven't mentioned PAL in this video simply because I don't have any experience with those consoles. So the dragons live in the PAL region, so please look that up online. I'm only talking about North American and Japanese cross compatibility. The same also goes for memory cards, rumble packs, transfer packs. Everything that you can find in North America will work on a Japanese system and vice versa. I think I've covered everything. We've talked about power cables, AV cables, games, accessories. I hope I've cleared up any issues that you have playing your Japanese games in North America or vice versa. I hope this video has been informative to you. I've been your man out of Japan, Jay Contra. Thanks for watching, and mahalo.